your story resonates with me. I know you just started the story, but your story resonates with me because I've had so many individuals who come to me, and then when I tell them a little bit about what like heart rate variability training is or heart rate variability biofeedback is, I'm like, honestly, like at the core of it, this is breathwork training. We just use technology as an objective means to show you like what's being changed. So it's incredible.
Yeah, no, definitely. And so, you know, for some people, if they don't have some sort of like markers or feedback or whatever, it's a tool to help us, you know, like I was saying, that question of like, am I doing it right? Like that can be some tools to show you, you know, you are doing it right. You know, and there are simple things for people in terms of like, if you're trying to create more of a parasympathetic state and calm your body down or calm the system down, noticing more saliva building up in the mouth is like, oh yeah, and then like these little things of signs of like, okay, I'm doing what I'm doing. Like there are those things available to us as tools to help us know we're doing something right. And I think that for a lot of people, like this particular client, going, if we can do something that makes us feel a difference straight away, then it gives us that like hook and that like, okay, this is a thing. And you know, that was for me with the Oxygen Advantage. How did it started with like trying some breath holds and being like shocked at how bad I was.
Do you remember what your Bolt score was?
Oh, it was less than 10.
Yeah.
I couldn't do 20.
Which isn't that uncommon, but it would just scary. But yeah, that's less than 10 for people who don't know. They probably will listen. You know, Patrick and I talk about this plenty, but less than 10 is not optimal by any means.
Well, it was like the category I fell into when reading the book. It was like, you know, you've got asthma and I'm like, well, I have, and I was like, I know I've had this injury and but like I'm feeling quite good now, and like I was running 5Ks at this point. Like I was running a 20-minute 5K. My Bolt score was 10. Within 6 weeks.
So you have a high level of will and motivation, but from
so
just
like,
physiologically,
I'm like crossing the finish line and dying, and then like. But that was what I knew. Like my mind, I wasn't the most skillful rugby player, but like you wouldn't beat me on like effort and just like I'll just outwork you type of thing.
I love it.
And I had that, and that mindset tends to get you in trouble sometimes, depending on what the physical activity is that you're doing. You just won't give up. But within 6 weeks, well, the first time I tried some breath holds. Bolt score is terrible. Walking steps, climbing steps. Before I got to 20 steps, like I just panicked. I've never suffered with like a panic attack or anything like that, but I just felt like I was suffocating, and I was like, man, and then looking and Patrick saying, well, it should be over 60, and if you're a professional athlete, it should be like 80 to 100.
Right.
And I'm thinking like, there is no way on this earth I'm ever going to get to 100. Like that is, how does someone even do that? Like in my head, I'm like, you've got to be like a free diver, or, you know, lo and behold, it took me a long time because I did a lot of stuff wrong. And actually the reason why I did the training with Patrick was not because I wanted to start teaching it. I was, quite happily enjoying the role I was doing as an S&C coach. I was like, this is a thing. I can see it. When I do some of the exercises, I feel better, but I'm not making long-term progress. And there's some markers that I'm absolutely terrible at. Yeah. I need to understand this better just for myself. And that's all it was.
What did you find that you were doing wrong? What was kind of the thing that you were able to put your finger on?
So I was like, so initially it was, and actually Patrick, we had him on our podcast, and like he's like the best bloke. He's like the nicest bloke you've ever met.
He is he's a great guy.
Message him after, basically read the book and reach out to him on Instagram, whatever. And he's like, "Do you want to come on the podcast?" He's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Well, like I've just finished reading this book and now I'm talking to the guy." But,
I know, it's amazing.
And I message him after I've been trying to do stuff, and I'm like, I'm really struggling. Like, I think I'm dying at like 20 steps. So he's like, he gives me an half an hour Zoom call or whatever for free, just to like basically encourage me to, one with the breath holds, is like actually push through. Whereas I was just like wimping out of it. Yeah. So, and he was like, get a pulse oximeter and just see where your blood oxygen is at, because he was like, you'll think, and he was bang on. He was like, when you think you're dying and suffocating, your blood oxygen levels are like barely even dropped if you're at 20 steps. So
right.
I'm like doing so I get my pulse system. I'm doing my breath hold, and I look down. I think I'm dying. My diaphragm's like just contracting.
What are you at, like 95, 96?
97.
That's funny. So right within normal range.
That was the tool though for me that actually like broke that mentally. So
That's
I
incredible.
knew the rationale and the science, and everyone sort of we explained that the carbon dioxide is the stimulus to breathe. That's what's being monitored in the brainstem. And you go, okay, I get that. You go and do a breath hold, and that just, even though you know it like just goes out of the window, and it's like, get me oxygen in.
Right.
Like, and then you look at the pulse oximetry, and that broke that lie that my brain was telling myself. It was like, I know you're fine. So I would actually I would say that out loud in my head. And that's why I now coach people now with breath holds. I'll say, it's fine. It's fine. Trust it. It's fine. It's fine. It's all And actually, Patrick would say, like, relax into the breath hold.
Yes.
And I couldn't do that for probably about 2 years. Or at least I couldn't relax into it because I would just tense against it, and I'd hold the tension high up.
Yes.
A lot of to do with sort of the poor mechanics of not having that freedom in my rib cage,
right,
and holding tension higher up, and that like lack of movement from those lower ribs, affecting how well I could actually get the diaphragm to function. And
there's been some really interesting research that I was looking at that looked at EMG, or basically muscular activity for free divers when they're doing breath holds. And so they put these EEG electrodes like on the intercostal muscles of these free divers, and then all around in different areas where you would expect them to tense up when they're doing these extremely long breath holds, or they're doing like a CO2 table. And what they found is that like it is very rare for these individuals until like the very end of their breath hold to like tense their muscles like whatsoever. They are so relaxed into the breath hold. It's just incredible, where it's like, I know for me, I'm probably a little bit better at it than what I used to, but for me, it was like almost like after about 10 seconds of a breath hold, like my body would just tense up. And then I wasn't until I learned how to kind of like relax into the breath hold that I found out that, oh man, that amount of muscular tension was using so much oxygen, number one.
I was gonna say, exactly.
It was a ton of oxygen use and energy use. And so I was like, I couldn't hold my breath nearly as long until I just finally relaxed into it, which is very much a psychological thing, because when we hold our breath, our instinct is that like, are we holding our breath because we're dying? Like, are we underneath water right now? And so the natural inclination is that the body wants to say, okay, well, it must mean that we need to fight to get out of it. And so what do? We tense ourselves up. But until we regulate that and train that, like, our breath hold time's not going to get much better, because for us, we can develop a little bit of CO2 tolerance even though we're tensing up, but not nearly as much when we learn to relax into it. And we tell the brain, we're not dying. Like, I'm not going to pass out here and then just like not breathe anymore and just be, non-existent. So it's a really interesting practice. Thanks for listening to the Hanu Health Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. This podcast would not happen without listeners and supporters like you. And the best way to support us and the show is to head on over to iTunes and provide us with a 5-star review. This helps us reach others and spread the good word of breathing and stress resiliency. If we read your 5-star review on air, please reach out to podcast@hanuhealth.com with your name and mailing address, and we will send you some sweet Hanu gear. Until next time, breathe better and stress less.